Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by Albert Bramante. Albert has over 2 decades of experience as a talent agent. He brings a unique psychological and practical insight to his work because he is a certified hypnotist and NLP practitioner, has a PhD in psychology. So we're going to be talking to him about everything that he's up to in his work and how his work is unique. So Albert, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Curtis, for the wonderful introduction and again for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here today.
Well, why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you. Yeah, sure. My name is Albert Bramante, as you know. I uh, am an agent. My company is Bramante Artists. I've been in the business since 2003. I started off in casting, and so I worked all throughout many years representing various artists for film, TV, and theater. I consider myself an architect of their careers. Where we work together, we work as a partnership into the team. And I also have a strong background in psychology. I have a PhD and been a psychology professor. And also, published a book last year, Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists. And, it's been a great journey, actually. And I'm really honored to do what I love to do, and that's working with actors and just, even being a service to others is what really, excites me.
Well, tell the listeners how you got into being a talent agent.
Sure. Well, I started dabbling off into acting myself because I was always interested, even as a young child, in the performing arts. I was in drama club in high school. I took some theater classes as electives in college, and I really enjoyed the process of performing. However, the performing lifestyle was I was more suitable for behind the scenes. I really enjoyed working with actors, not necessarily being one. So, after a couple of years of acting, I've made a lot of friends with actors, and I started getting involved behind the scenes, working at film festivals, volunteering at film festivals, working in casting short films, casting feature films. And eventually, I came to, know some of the actors that I wanted to start representing them and managing them. And, it was 2004. It was when I made the transition from whatever little freelance odds and ends to become a full-time talent representative. And, it's been 21 years and going strong. So that's how I got started, in a sense. And it happened by accident too. I was always on track to being, I was intending to be, when I was growing up, to be an academic psychologist, a research psychologist. And it wasn't until, my little foray into acting that really, changed a lot of the course of my life.
Well, what's one piece of advice you would give somebody? Because I know you talk about your book, but what's one piece of advice you would give somebody that's overwhelmed by self-doubt?
The main reason is always connect to the source. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is driving you to, do whatever it is you do, whether you're an actor, whether you're a performer, or whether you're a professional, a teacher, a practitioner. What is the source that is driving you? What makes you passionate? And remain connected to that every day by always remembering that what really gets you out of bed every day, and really stay committed to that. so that you always remember, what it is you've done and what, where you came from and why, what direction are you going?
Well, tell listeners about your book that you just published. Tell us what we can expect when we read it and where we can get it from.
Well, sure. It's available on Amazon, audio as well as Kindle. So you can get it as a paperback or as Kindle, as well as an audiobook. So I have it on Audible, Spotify, Apple, and the book is a combination of personal insights as well as research. I did a lot of research for the book, so there's some sound psychological research there, and I start off talking like about self-esteem, and then I go into the concept of self-efficacy, which is what that really self-efficacy means is that you have the belief in your ability to do what it is you set out to do, that you're capable. And then I talk about personality a bit, and then I go into fear of success, as well as imposter syndrome and even fear of money. And then all throughout in these chapters are actionable steps that you can work to improve yourself. Um, and I pepper that all throughout the book, all different techniques. And I'll tell you one here, and that is something that was taught to me that I really found immensely valuable, and that's creating what you call a happy file. And what do I mean by a happy file? So this is actually something physical. I don't recommend doing this like in an online or an email. This is get an actual journal, an old fashioned journal, paperback, notebook, whatever it is. And every time you get a positive experience, whether it's a note on a performance, feedback on a job, good press that you receive, document it in your journal. And every time when you're having that moment of self-doubt or that, imposter syndrome is coming in, kick out that happy file and remain connected. And it'll remind you of why you're doing what you're doing. And it'll kind of be like that little bit of a kickstart that you need sometimes when days are hard. Another technique that I can, recommend is hang out with the crowd that you hang out with is so important. So always associate yourself with people that are either your level or even more advanced than you are, more successful than you are at the moment, because we're the sum of our peers in a sense. So if you hang out with people that are good, that are already elevating themselves, there's a good chance of probability they're going to elevate you as well. And so I cover like that and other stuff in the book too.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Yeah, speaking of other stuff in your book, you talk about failure extensively. So how can artists use or harness failure and instead of looking at it as a setback, that they can look at it as a stepping stone?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. In my background in neurolinguistic program, NLP, one of the core statements is that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So let each opportunity that, didn't go your way or didn't go in your direction, because that's really all it is it just didn't go in your favor or go in your way. And so what you can do then is take that failure and take it as an opportunity. Look at it as an opportunity to learn, to improve yourself. So again, no such thing as failure, only feedback. So what can you learn from this experience? And what did you get out of this? Because you might have made new connections, even though the opportunity didn't work out in your favor. You might have made some new connections, or even just some new knowledge. Celebrate that. And also, like in a business I work with actors, constantly there's a lot more no's than there are yeses, and any performer. So the one thing that, again, I always say is, with that, learn from that and look at it as that no, and frame it as not today, not yet. So it's having a growth mindset is really important. And I recommend to all your listeners to read a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, which is absolutely one of my go-to books. And it in there talks about the growth mindset, and I mentioned that in my book. So what can each failure teach you? And what valuable pieces of information can you learn from those failures? And therefore become more successful each time. And that it should not at all be a setback at all.
Well, let's talk about how learning personality traits, especially the big five, if artists learn those, how can that help them in their personal and professional lives?
Sure. Well, there's certain elements of the big five that really help someone be successful. So one of the major traits that's linked to success, and a lot of research has backed this up, is the trait of conscientiousness. So that's the second, the C in the big five is conscientiousness, which means discipline, which means focus. So those that are higher in this trait, those that are more focused and more goal oriented and more driven and more on top of their experiences, are more likely to be successful. So you can harness that by keeping journals, keeping track of your appointments, putting things in a planner, keeping your word with commitments and follow through. Because the one thing when it comes to conscientiousness, we tend to overestimate how conscientious we are. A lot of people, when they find out, or when they take like a test that measures the big five traits, a lot of people are surprised at the fact that they're not as conscientious as they thought they were. Like they scored kind of low on that area. And that's because a lot of people are not fully aware of self-awareness comes in. So we can work on improving conscientiousness by being, on discipline and focus. So that's one piece. Another trait is agreeableness. Now, agreeableness refers to how well you can take direction. And part of being successful is being coachable and being open to feedback and learning and adapting from that feedback. And that comes from agreeableness. Now, this is one of those traits where you don't want to be you don't want to be too low on that, but you also want to be too high, because if you're high in agreeableness, sometimes too high, you can sometimes be taken advantage of, or kind of get pushed over on. So you want to have a little bit of disagreeableness, especially when it comes to like sales or negotiations, because at some point you do have to stand up and assert yourself, which might be by being a little bit disagreeable. So, but it's important to be coachable, and it's important to learn and be able to adapt to situations, which also relates to the the openness, which is another trait in the big five, openness to experience, trying new things. And I also talk about this in my book, step outside your comfort zone, do something that makes you uncomfortable. Whether it's giving a public speech, going to like a Toastmasters and giving a public speech, or even something fun is karaoke. I mean, karaoke can be very scary for a lot of people, but it's something that'll stepping outside your comfort zone. So I'm not saying everybody should go out and do karaoke right now, but what I'm saying is that doing something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, because when you do that, you're going to feel empowered, and that's going to also be helpful. And extroversion, well, that trait, it's important to have be like I would say a balance of both. Because you do have to collaborate with other people most of the time, and know how to collaborate, know how to talk to people. So I would say practice, again, going to different meetup groups and meeting people and communicating and just getting that out there. And the last one is neuroticism, which refers to how easily you are reacting to stress, or how easily you can get anxiety or worked up. So those that score high in neuroticism tend to be more prone to anxiety, depression. So I think if you work on the other four, it should lower your scores on neuroticism. And it's so much related to success, and especially when it comes to self-sabotage. If you get someone who's high in neuroticism and low on conscientiousness, that can be a recipe for self-sabotaging behavior, or what you would sometimes call shooting yourself in the foot and making mistakes, or just ruining your own chances. And also sometimes being low in agreeableness is going to be hard for you to be coachable, which may make it difficult for people to work with you. So that's why it's kind of important to look at these 5 traits.
Well, let's talk about the difference between toxic self-esteem and regular self-esteem, and how artists can make sure that they use this to their advantage and make sure they don't have too toxic of self-esteem.
And that's a good point too. There's a fine balance, because toxic self-esteem is when someone has an inflated or grandiose, or they say like a really high view of themselves, but at the same time it's also fragile, where to a point where they're not open to criticism. They get highly insulted. And sometimes even with actors or performers, what can happen is, toxic high self-esteem related to what we talked about just before with agreeableness, the low in agreeableness, which means that they're not going to really want to hear feedback, and they're not going to be comfortable, and they can get really angry and upset when they get any constructive criticism or feedback. So, but regular self-esteem and high self-esteem is, respecting and yourself, and really coming to the notion or realization that you deserve to be here. Now, toxic self-esteem is more of like you're thinking that you're better than other people, whereas healthy self-esteem is you still view yourself as valuable, but you're still humbled enough to like treat everybody with compassion and empathy. So you want to, definitely have high self-esteem, but not too high, because again, you have to learn and be coached, and, learn from mistakes too. So there's a big difference, in a sense, I feel. And usually, again, actors that have that, or anybody who has that toxic high self-esteem, is going to also be self-sabotaging opportunities.
We'll talk about, you mentioned a couple of things in your book about raising self-esteem. Talk about that, and, if possible, share a story of someone who applied what you talk about in your book to raise their self-esteem.
Sure. Well, self-esteem would be what I talked about earlier. Raising that would be hanging out with people that build you up, rather than tear you down. So surround yourself with positive, minded individuals. That's the main thing. And also, again, being connected to, and maintaining your happy file. I worked with when I first started working with this actress. She was very shy, very timid, and we kind of like, she got a lot of positive feedback when she was in our acting class from other acting students, and we started like kind of creating our own happy file just on that feedback alone. And then eventually she became more confident in her skin, and then wound up booking, a role on Orange is the New Black, and also booking a role on the CBS show FBI. Something that 2 years prior to that would have been, a pipe dream. So celebrating your successes, wins, surrounding yourself with positive mind people, and keeping, mistakes or even looking at failures as more learning opportunities.
Tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Well, I on my website I have recordings, for sale, hypnosis recordings, for confidence, for addictions, for sleep, for any other like fears, or if you just need like a little bit of boost on self-esteem, feel free to do that. I'll also be launching my own stuff this year, a group coaching program, so you can follow me on social media for updates on that. That's what I have lined up, and also I have a couple other ideas for books that I'd like to see out in the either first or second quarter of 2026.
Speaking of your website, throw it out there so listeners can keep up with everything that you're up to.
Sure. My website is just my name, albertbramante.com. Again, you can also follow me on social media at Instagram, Dr. Al Bramante, or even, follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook. It's just my name, Albert Bramante.
Okay, close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Well, just remember why you're here, and always a couple other things that you can do. Mantras that if you're big, if you believe in affirmations, I would say always, regardless, whatever profession you're in, is always say to yourself in the morning when you're waking up and right before going to bed, is I deserve to be here. I deserve to have a seat at the table. And also another affirmation could be is every day and every way I am getting better and better. And just keep telling yourself that at least 3 or 4 times a day, every day and every way I'm getting better and better. And you should see changes within, a few weeks, if sooner.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, albertbramante.com. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Jump on your favorite podcast app, follow the show, leave us a review, share it. For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, check out our new website, www.curveball337.com. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. Albert, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
And thank you for inviting me, Curtis. Have a great night.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.